a text message, a locked room, a trail that ends at the edge of a cliff. Phoebe Handsjuk was just 24 when she left behind a trail of questions that still haunt Australia to this day. On a quiet evening in Melbourne, she was seen entering the luxury Balenciaga apartment tower where she lived with her boyfriend. Hours later, her body was discovered at the bottom of a garbage chute, battered, broken, and surrounded by more questions than answers. Police said she climbed in herself. Her family, they never believed it. From the moment Phoebe's body was found, nothing added up. The angle, the injuries, the strange behavior of those closest to her, and then came the reports that someone may have tampered with the scene, that the apartment CCTV had blind spots, that blood was found on the computer mouse inside her room, and yet no one was arrested. This isn't just a story of a young woman who died under mysterious circumstances. It's the story of a case that was closed too quickly, a family that refused to stay silent, and a justice system that might have buried the truth along with Phoebe. What really happened inside that apartment? Was it an accident, as police claimed, or a cover-up? Let's dig into the disturbing disappearance and even more disturbing death of Phoebe Handsjuk. Phoebe Handsjuk was not your average 24-year-old. She was vibrant, artistic, spontaneous, the kind of person who lit up a room and left a mark on everyone she met. Friends described her as soulful and full of contradictions, both fierce and fragile, independent yet deeply caring. She was born in June 1986 in Melbourne into a close-knit family. Her mother Natalie was a former police officer turned grief counselor, and her father Len was a psychiatrist. You couldn't make this up, both parents trained to help others through trauma, and yet they'd faced the worst kind of trauma themselves. Phoebe was a gifted writer, a natural with kids, and deeply emotional, but she also battled some demons. She had a history of depression, anxiety, and alcohol dependency struggles she was working through. She'd been in and out of therapy, tried different medications, and was open about her journey with those around her. At the time of her death, Phoebe was living in a luxury apartment in Melbourne's St Kilda Road precinct with her boyfriend Anthony Hampel. He wasn't just anyone. Hampel was a well-connected events promoter, the son of a county court judge. They'd been dating for about a year and a half, and while the relationship seemed stable from the outside, those close to Phoebe said it was far from perfect. She had tried to leave him more than once, and just days before she died, she did. Or at least she tried. It was Thursday, December 2nd, 2010, a day that started like any other. Phoebe was home at the Balenciaga apartment tower on St Kilda Road, Melbourne. Her boyfriend, Anthony Hampel, had left for work earlier that morning, and according to phone records, Phoebe spent most of the day inside the apartment. She sent a few text messages to friends. Some of them were bizarre, almost cryptic. One message sent around 11:44 in the morning said, "Hi Dad, I love you. Be free and live life to the fullest." Another said she was going to sleep for a long time. But here's where it gets weirder. Phoebe also made plans with her father to have dinner that evening. So was she saying goodbye, or was she just emotional? Phone and computer logs suggest she used her laptop during the day. At one point, she searched for hotels. She also attempted to call a hair salon to reschedule an appointment. So again, some things looked normal, even hopeful. But at 6:05 that evening, Anthony Hampel used his security fob to enter the building. According to him, when he walked into the apartment, Phoebe wasn't there. At 7 o'clock, a cleaner found a trail of blood on the floor of the ground-level garbage room. Minutes later, they discovered Phoebe's body. She had fallen 12 stories down a narrow garbage chute feet first. Her jeans were around her knees. Her phone was still in the apartment, and the chute door, only 22 centimeters wide, had no fingerprints. Anthony said he didn't hear a thing. By the time paramedics arrived, Phoebe was already gone. When the investigators entered the apartment, Phoebe shared with Anthony Hempel. A few things stood out, but not in the way you'd expect. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no blood in the hallway, nothing to suggest a violent altercation, but there was something subtle, something off. The first oddity. Blood stains were found on the computer mouse and near the keyboard. This was later confirmed in the coroner's findings. That blood matched Phoebe's DNA. So, why would she be bleeding in front of her computer? Was she injured before the fall? Then came the questions about Anthony Hempel himself. He told police that when he came home shortly after 6 in the evening, Phoebe was gone. He said he assumed she went out, maybe for a walk or to visit friends. He even claimed he wasn't worried. But here's the kicker. Phoebe's handbag, phone, and keys were all still in the apartment. Why would she go anywhere without those things? Why wouldn't he try to contact her? And most important, why didn't he report her missing? Instead, he waited until the police showed up at his door to inform him she was dead. Also worth noting, Anthony didn't accompany police to identify the body. He didn't call Phoebe's family. He simply stayed in the apartment while they went to the morgue. And then there's the security system. The Balenciaga building had surveillance cameras, but the chute room on the 12th floor, where Phoebe supposedly entered the garbage shaft, had no cameras. Just a blind spot. One more thing. The garbage chute door was 22 centimeters wide, about the width of a laptop. Experts said it would be extremely difficult for a person to climb into it unaided, especially under the influence of sleeping pills, alcohol, and painkillers, all of which were found in Phoebe's system. So the question remains, did she climb in herself or did someone help her in? When the building cleaner opened the garbage room door shortly after 7 o'clock that evening, he noticed something strange. Right away, a trail of blood on the floor, leading to a pile of trash near the compactor unit. At first, he thought it might be an injured animal. Then he saw the body. Phoebe Handsjuk was lying on the floor, twisted, broken, barely recognizable. She had fallen 12 stories through a narrow metal chute, landing in a steel compactor used for crushing trash. The impact was devastating. Her body showed extensive internal injuries, including a shattered jaw, a severed foot cleanly amputated on impact, massive internal bleeding, fractured pelvis and thighs, and unusual bruising around her arms. But the details that raised the most red flags weren't just the injuries. It was how she landed. Forensic experts said her body positioning was not consistent with a simple vertical fall. She appeared to have tumbled, suggesting disorientation, or worse, that she may have been unconscious when she went down. There was also this. Her jeans were around her knees, not fully removed, not off, but pulled down in a way that made climbing extremely difficult. Some theorized that she could have done it while intoxicated. Others, including forensic specialists, found it highly unlikely. Add to that the blood trail on the floor and the fact that there were no fingerprints on the garbage chute handle, not even Phoebe's. The metal handle, which had to be pulled outward to open the chute, had been completely wiped clean. Investigators also discovered that her phone, purse, and keys were left behind in the apartment, reinforcing the possibility that she had never intended to leave the building, let alone die that night. Yet, despite all these details, despite the contradictions, the blood, the lack of fingerprints, the intoxication, the injuries, authorities initially ruled Phoebe's death as non-suspicious. No crime scene, No suspects, no arrests. It took nearly 4 years for the official inquest into Phoebe Handsjuk's death to conclude. In 2014, Victorian coroner Peter White finally released his findings. His conclusion: that Phoebe died accidentally after voluntarily climbing into the garbage chute in a confused state, heavily affected by alcohol, sleeping pills, still knocks, and painkillers. But this ruling was met with outrage, not closure. Let's break it down. Phoebe had a blood alcohol level of 0.163 times the legal driving limit, high levels of still knocks, a powerful sleeping medication known to cause hallucinations, disorientation, and even automatic behaviors, traces of prescription painkillers. Yes, that's a dangerous mix. But could she really have walked to the chute, opened it, and climbed in head first while under that influence? Many experts say no. A former homicide detective, Tommy Watson, reviewed the case and said point blank, "I've never seen anything like it. I've seen people fall, jump, be pushed, but this, it doesn't add up." He wasn't alone. Forensic engineers testified that the garbage chute door was 22 centimeters wide and set more than a meter off the floor. It required a downward pull while lifting your legs and pushing yourself in. Phoebe would have needed significant coordination and strength to do that while intoxicated. And again, there were 0 fingerprints on the handle. How does someone open and enter the chute without leaving any prints, not even smudges? Coroner White dismissed the idea of foul play, but acknowledged key inconsistencies. The computer mouse with blood was never explained. No full DNA sweep of the chute door was done. No reconstruction was ordered to determine if Phoebe physically could have climbed in alone. In fact, no full reenactment was ever done by police or the coroner. And yet, despite all of this, the ruling stood: death by misadventure, accidental. No inquest into homicide, no suspects named, no charges filed. For Phoebe's loved ones, this wasn't just a legal failure, it was a betrayal. From the moment Phoebe's body was found, her family refused to believe this was just a tragic accident. Her mother, Natalie Handsjuk, a trained grief counselor and former police officer, said bluntly, "My daughter did not climb into a garbage chute. Something happened to her, and it wasn't suicide." Her father, Len, a respected psychiatrist, echoed that they both knew Phoebe was struggling, yes. She had battled addiction, anxiety, and identity crises. But she was also trying to recover. She had booked appointments. She had made dinner plans with her dad. She had just reconnected with her grandfather. She was planning her future, not giving up on it. So when the coroner closed the case as misadventure, the family wasn't just disappointed, they were furious. The family and their legal team raised dozens of issues with the investigation. Why weren't the garbage chute doors tested for fingerprints immediately? Why was there no proper reenactment of how Phoebe could have climbed into the chute while intoxicated? Why was the blood on the computer mouse in the apartment never followed up? Why wasn't Anthony Hampel, her boyfriend, more thoroughly questioned or treated as a person of interest? And perhaps the biggest question of all, why was this never treated as a potential homicide? Phoebe's family took their fight to the media. They gave interviews, participated in documentaries, and worked with independent investigators. Their message was clear: we don't want revenge, we want answers, we want the truth. The case gained traction in Australia, especially after the ABC's Australian Story ran a deep dive episode titled The Fall. Online forums lit up, independent forensic experts started weighing in. The more people looked at the evidence, the more it became clear. This case was far from closed. With no arrests, no suspects, and a coroner's ruling that left more questions than answers, 3 theories have emerged, and each one changes the entire story. Theory 1: Suicide by garbage chute. This was the theory adopted officially by investigators and the coroner. The claim: Phoebe, under the influence of alcohol and Stilnox, entered the garbage chute intentionally in a state of confusion or despair. But here's the thing. She had made plans for the evening with her father. She had a history of suicidal thoughts, but she was actively seeking help. And more importantly, how does someone drugged, disoriented, and emotionally unstable manage to walk to a chute door 1 meter off the ground, open a 22 cm wide hatch, lift themselves in feet first, and leave no fingerprints at all? Even veteran homicide detectives said they'd never seen a case like it. Theory 2: A sleepwalking accident. Some speculated that Phoebe, possibly experiencing a Stilnox-induced automatism episode, may have sleepwalked, climbed into the chute without realizing what she was doing, and fell to her death. It sounds wild, but Stilnox has been known to cause bizarre, unconscious behaviors, except that would still require physical coordination. Phoebe's injuries indicated she might have been unconscious before the fall. And again, no fingerprints, no skin cells, no DNA on the handle. That's not sleepwalking. That's cleaned. Theory 3: Foul play. This is the theory Phoebe's family, many experts, and countless true crime watchers believe. That someone, possibly someone inside the apartment, played a direct or indirect role in her death. That the blood on the computer mouse wasn't from nothing. That the absence of prints on the chute wasn't an accident. That she may have been injured, incapacitated, and then placed in the chute. And then there's this. Her boyfriend, Anthony Hampel, never reported her missing. He had connections in legal and political circles. He lawyered up quickly and refused further questioning. While no direct evidence links him or anyone else to foul play, the coincidences are loud. So which theory is true? The authorities ruled it an accident. Her parents call it a cover-up. The public still split. But there's one thing almost everyone agrees on. Something isn't right. The more you look at this case, the more one thing becomes painfully clear. Phoebe's death was investigated like a tragic accident, not a suspicious death. And because of that, critical steps were never taken. 1. No full forensic sweep of the chute handle, despite the fact that the garbage chute was central to the case. Police never dusted it for fingerprints at the time of discovery. There was no DNA analysis of the handle or the doorframe. No glove prints, no fibers, nothing. By the time this was raised in court, the scene had been long cleaned. 2. The blood on the computer mouse. Blood was found in Phoebe's apartment, specifically on her computer mouse and near her keyboard. And yet, police never took swabs from other objects nearby. There was no analysis of the blood's age. Could it have been from that day? Earlier, it was noted, then ignored. 3. No reenactment or reconstruction. A physical reenactment could have tested whether it was even possible for Phoebe, intoxicated, sedated, and disoriented, to climb into the chute on her own. It was never done. Not by police, not by coroners, not even later when requested by the family. Independent experts had to create 3D models and mock-ups years later, all of which showed that it would have been extremely difficult, if not physically impossible, for her to do it alone. 4. No deep dive into her boyfriend. Despite being the last known person to see Phoebe alive, Anthony Hampel was never treated as a suspect. He wasn't cross-examined. He wasn't asked to give a timeline under oath. He refused to participate in the inquest and declined media interviews. Even when Phoebe's family publicly raised concerns, authorities stood by the accidental death ruling. 5. Mental health framed as a conclusion. Phoebe's mental health history was heavily cited in the coroner's ruling as if it explained everything. But here's what the family argued. Having depression doesn't mean you're suicidal, and being suicidal doesn't mean you choose to die this way. She had tried to leave the relationship. She had made plans. She had reached out to friends. She was struggling, but she wasn't giving up. The sad truth. If even one of these investigative failures had been followed up, we might not be talking about theories. We might be talking about justice. It's been over a decade since Phoebe Handsjuk died. The official record still reads accidental death. No arrests, no charges, no criminal investigation ever opens. The file, according to police, is closed. But for those who knew Phoebe and for the growing number of people who've discovered her story online, this case is anything but over. Thanks to relentless work by her family and independent journalists, Phoebe's case has stayed alive in the public eye. Documentaries, true crime podcasts, YouTube investigations, each has pulled more people into the mystery. And every time someone new hears this story, they ask the same question. How could this have happened? In recent years, forensic specialists have called again for the case to be reopened not as a suicide, but as a potential criminal case. Experts have even recommended a second inquest, a new autopsy, and reconstruction testing to prove what the original investigation never even tried to confirm. But as of today, no legal action, no review. Phoebe's parents have never stopped demanding answers. They don't want revenge. They don't want headlines. They want truth and accountability. They believe their daughter died under suspicious circumstances and that someone out there still knows more than they've said. They believe the justice system failed her. And they believe it can still be fixed if people start listening. So what can you do? If you believe this case deserves to be reopened, share Phoebe's story. Comment, engage, demand justice, even if the system doesn't. And if you know something, say something. Because what happened to Phoebe Handsjuk wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning that sometimes, even in a world of cameras, coroners' reports, and modern forensics, the truth still gets thrown away.